apartheid? Which crimes were covered up by the authorities at the time? Do you remember some of the names from then? Victor Palacio was one. Others, and there were others who appeared to have some kind of protection from the apartheid government. Well, it appears both you and I are a little closer to actually knowing. On Friday, the Supreme Court of Appeal ruled against the Reserve Bank in a case brought by the SA History Archive. The archive has been trying to get access to that information around the smuggling of gold, Eskom bonds and even foreign exchange fraud. All right, to talk to us now about this, Dr. Geraldine Vrieselaar is the director of the South African History Archive. She joins us now. Dr. Vrieselaar, good afternoon to you. What kind of information have you been trying to access here? Why did you go to court on this?
This comes after 6 long years with the initial prior request that was lodged with the South African Reserve Bank in 2014 for information on a set of individuals, of which some of the names that you listed, Palazzolo and Robert Hill, amongst others. We sought information from the period of 1980, over a 30-year period, for records that could shed light on economic crime that was committed during apartheid. And this was in consultation with Open Secrets, which is a civil society organization based in Cape Town. You might know the author Henny van Vuuren wrote a book, Apartheid, Guns and Money. And the book was written without obviously having access to these records because of the enormous amount of time that it has taken to gain access to these records.
Could some of the people who are implicated in this, could some of them still be alive? I mean, could some even be in some sort of public position?
The initial request was for 8 individuals, of which the Reserve Bank came back and said that they only have records for 3 individuals. So one of them is deceased, the other 2 is still alive. And of those individuals, they do not hold public office.
Okay. I'm trying to put myself as being, in charge of the Reserve Bank and think, why would I oppose this? I mean, this was stuff that happened before 1994. There's surely no one in the Reserve Bank now who was there then. Some people might have been around, might have sort of, ticked certain boxes, but it was a different time. And as we know, no one's been held really accountable for what happened during apartheid. Much bigger conversation. But, I mean, what's the Reserve Bank's argument been against you?
Well, the argument was that the prior request that was made was vague, for starters. That's what they said, and that it would take the time that it would take to create access to the records that do exist would take them away from what their job is, which is what they do at the Reserve Bank. But they do have an information officer whose duty it is, where it's in the public interest at least, to give access to records. And according to our calculations as archivists, it would not have taken the specified amount of time that they said it would take to let SAHA have access to these records.
I mean, if they're not running yeah, go on.
Sorry. According to their calculations, it would have taken an inordinate amount of time, which would have, detracted the resources. But according to our calculations, it would have taken 21 days to sift through the archival material. And SAHA also offered its services to do so, obviously under their supervision, but this was also refused. And the other issue at hand is obviously, I think the government's response to creating access to information has not been a default to openness, but always been a default to secrecy, even when it comes to apartheid-era records.
Dr. Vrieselaar, I was going to say, I mean, you run the South African History Archive. You're absolutely the person who should be running their archives, if I may say, if they can't actually access this information in more than 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, for us, it would have taken 21 days. According to their calculations, it would have taken them 80 plus days. because we have a trained eye, we know what we are looking for. And as for the argument that said that the request was vague, it is not true. It was quite specific in that it had a time frame. It referred to what kinds of records that we were looking for. And then, of course, the other reason that they had was that it was not in the public interest, that it was for commercial purposes, because they knew that it was research that would be used for a book that was busy being written at the time.
One of the things that we've had with information from that time is around the possible manipulation of information. I mean, I know people who know that they had records in the Bureau of State Security. They know that the police at the time had records on them. When 1994 came, they asked for that information. They were told it doesn't exist. Are you worried that some of the information could have actually been manipulated or could now even be destroyed?
I think what had happened, obviously, in the twilight years of apartheid, a lot of information were destroyed, volumes and tons of information, and this is documented. So I am more worried about that the information was destroyed as opposed to it being manipulated, because where records have been manipulated, you can still, if you have access to different archives, read different archives against each other to make some kind of semblance of a narrative or what comes closer to the truth by if there's oral accounts or if there's documentary evidence, then you can piece together the fragments of a story. So whereas when a record is destroyed, there is no way that you can get it back again, if you understand what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, I'm with you. And the importance of all of this. I mean, I can hear the arguments coming from some lawyer already. My client is old, they hold no public position. Why is it important for someone to write a book about it now? It is important, though, isn't it?
Yes, I would argue that it's very much important in order for us to understand where South Africa is now. And, I mean, South Africa really becomes a microcosm of what is happening anywhere else in the world. But since we are located in South Africa, it is very crucial to understand our history and to see the continuity between history and our contemporary events and how it is still unfolding. We cannot argue that what happened in the past does not have a semblance of what is occurring in our present. So in order for us to move forward, we need access, we need to understand the past, we need to understand the archive of the apartheid era in order to move forward. And that's how you grapple with it, that's how you deal with it, and that's from there onwards you can move on. So for us it's very important to understand what happened then, not just to trace back the continuities to present day corruption and economic crime. Certainly that has facilitated that, but also part of one of our pillars of what the South African History Archive stands for is for advocacy, accountability, and transparency. So to hold people that is responsible for economic crimes of the past and the present, to hold them accountable for that.